Hello, everybody. Hope you had a happy Easter. Guess I should say hello, web GISers. Okay, so I had a few things come up, a few problems. I had a technical glitch on my computer and I couldn't record. So it took me a few days to get the computer fixed. I had to get a couple um, items and replace them on the system board of my Mac. But I am back in business again. So let's get started with this. One of the things I noticed early on when I started looking at how I wanted to do this tutorial was some problems I was seeing inside the calcite framework. And as I dug into it a little bit more, I realized I wasn't super happy with the with how I was going to have to make the identify work for folks. I mean, I'm sure that there's some other ways to do it, but the way that I wanted to show you guys to do it was going to require a lot more acrobatics than I really wanted to put you guys through. So I thought maybe what I should do instead, or in lieu of that, is to lean on a pattern that we started with the leaflet application that we just turned in. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to start with, is showing you guys how to set up a menu bar that looks like this here. I'm going to switch over to my screen, my map screen, and direct your attention to the upper left corner. You can see that I've labeled this AGS change detection. And then I have, some different buttons in it. And, if I zoom down in, of course, I can see stuff. I can click on my impaired streams. Here's one of my impaired streams. There's a pop-up window for it. Here's the pop-up window for the ecoregions, the Edwards Plateau ecoregion. I can do things like turn on the well, let me go back out. So here's my full extent. I can do things like turn on my precipitation, my accumulated monthly precipitation. I can turn on, and then I can turn it back off, and then I can turn on my my precipitation for July of 2019 also. You also saw me here just now toggle off the streams. Notice also that when I toggle one of these layers on, the last one I toggled becomes what we call the active layer. I don't know that we're going to do something with this, but I do want to have that available. So we may end up doing something with that. So I'm going to go ahead and have this little idea of an active layer, which is essentially the last layer clicked. As you see here, I did that's precipitation. This is the ecoregions. When it's already on, it goes to none or stays none. But when you turn it and it hasn't been on, it goes like to this, like the water board. Oops, I did this as water board, but it should be the Parks and Wildlife ecoregions. And then also I'm going to show you how to toggle the MODIS data that we are looking at back and forth between the greening, the July and January. So that actually requires a little different, slightly different pattern to the behavior. And so if I click this one to toggle off the MODIS data, it actually, I don't know if you notice this, I'll turn it back on for a second so you can see, but you notice your swipe tool, which of course bisects or at least intersects your screen down the middle. If I click this, it removes not only the MODIS data from January and July, but it also removes the swipe. Because the question would become, if you wanted a single button to toggle on and off MODIS data, is which one would you turn on and off? So, I mean, you could still turn them both on or off if you wanted to with one button like this. But then again, you'd still have your swipe, which then has no layers in it. So if you're going to turn off the modus data, then you also have to essentially turn off the widget, the swipe widget. Okay. So I will be showing you how to do a couple of these, the pattern for doing a couple of these, and then you should be able to extrapolate that pattern for the others. I'll also show how to do the full map extent. That's what I just showed there. And I'll show you how to do the pop-up window that we're talking about doing for the impaired streams. Now, what I'm not doing, and what I haven't showed you here, is the ability to identify the rainfall data in any greater detail. And I'm not certain, since I'm having you make this shift in using Calcite, if I'm going to make us do that or not. I'm not going to, stop folks from doing it if they've already, gotten it in there. I'm not going to, take that away from anybody that wants to do it. But for those that have yet to get that part to work, the point query to work for the, for the precipitation data, I'm not going to do that. What we'll do instead is we'll be adding a legend. That's not going to be in this video, but I will add a legend, and basically that legend will toggle whenever you turn either this layer for precip for 2019 July or this layer for precip for 2019 January. Whenever you turn one of those on, I will set up, we'll have a legend set up here that just shows the rainfall ranges for the different colors. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and hop into it then. Let me refresh this map, have it go back to its default view. And let me go into my mapping application. And so to start with this, what we're going to do is we're going to add in a few links. So we haven't needed to use the Bootstrap stuff and the font awesome stuff for this yet. But if we were, these would be the necessary links for the style sheets. And then these are the necessary links for the scripts. So these are just the same ones we used last time for the leaflet project, Font Awesome Free 5.12.1 web for the Font Awesome folder, the Bootstrap 441 for the CSS, and then 341 for jQuery, and these others for Popper and Bootstrap JavaScript. Okay, so we're going to add those in. And at this point, assuming that you follow along and actually take out any references to Calcite, you could then leave this Calcite ESM.js file out, the script tag here out. You could, in the interim, I'll block comment mine out. I shouldn't see when I come back to this any error if I go and look at my my code down here, and I don't see any errors, so that's good. So it's okay to take that out if you have removed any reference to Calcite. Obviously, if you haven't removed the reference to Calcite, then you need to not comment that out yet. So let me see. Let me pause the share just for a second and check something else out real quick. Canary. I'm gonna put a little canary in here so we can see this a couple things. There's one for that modus and that. Okay, let's put one in here for this too, for preset, and then we'll go look at this. Okay. Now we looked at how to do one of these. Let me go back and share screen again. We looked at how to do one of these on, I believe, last Thursday as well, basically where we were doing this get element by ID. And then by doing that, you could toggle that. Now, the way that we had done it before was this right here. We did it with this value and calcite. So calcite wants you to use value, or has the concept of value for a the ID that you're using. So we were using this dot value. Well, if you take out the calcite, you can't use this dot value, but you can use this dot ID. This dot ID, the ID, of course, in this case, refers to the actual HTML ID. So the IDs that are attributes of our HTML button objects, okay, is what I'm talking about for that. And so here's the one for ecoregions. But this little code snippet that I have here is it starts from the button menu that we used inside of our Bootstrap leaflet application. Okay, so we're going to use that. Let me make this bigger so we can see it again. One of the things that I added for this is I changed the margin top and left to both 30 pixels from the top and 30 pixels from the left to start. I also changed the background color to dark gray. I'll mash together one word, dark gray, which is funny because when you do just gray, it's actually darker than dark gray. But, you know, there you go. That's CSS naming conventions for you for these named colors. Then I put an additional span. Oh, and one more thing that I did up here too is I did a max width. So this max width I did is 430 pixels. And what that refers to is the this width of this gray box, this dark gray background box that's going to sit be the container for the rest of the buttons and labels and things that has this set of menu items. Okay, so that was it. Max width, background color, and then I changed the margin top and margin left to 30 pixels each. Then I added a span with a BR slash tag, which is a BR slash is for line break. And so that is like a hard return. So that means that after change detection, the span that has change detection, it's going to do a hard return before it tries to render any of the other elements. Okay. And of course, then these other elements are, you know, basically directly lifted and shifted over from our leaflet application we did. And now I've changed the icons. They're different icons that I'm using, except for the full extent. So I just went in and I found one for satellites, a tree one, this tent one to use for precipitation, and this water one to use for the you know, for the rivers. And I'm having this here for now, this one that's identify, just as a placeholder. That was originally going to be there for us doing the precipitation on the raster layers, the you know, the amount of rainfall. So we may end up not using that at all. So I mean, it's there for now, and that's okay. We may not need it. And if we don't need it, we'll just comment it out from, you know, from the code here, and then it'll disappear. Okay, so so the other thing that we're going to have to do, you might also notice that these buttons, instead of being, you know, the square buttons that we used before, are these kind of medallion or circular buttons, right? So that's also just done with some CSS stuff. So I kind of built on some stuff here to do that, and so in my style tag up in the header, you know, I've got the style tag. I've added these CSS files. Okay. So I'll pause for a second so you can see that. So I have button circle, button medium, button circle, you know, small and XL, and then finally this button circle base. Okay. And so these things are all there to do what we need to do. And the way that we end up making the circles is with this border radius. Okay. You can see these different button circles have different border radiuses. And basically those are there to help with responsiveness, so that, you know, if our map goes to a slightly different size, then the buttons get slightly smaller, depending on what the JavaScript detects the browser size to be. So that's why there's this little BTN small, BTN medium, and BTN XL. Now, we don't really implement the responsive media queries to do this one and this one. They're just kind of in here for completeness sake. Really, you could get away with just having this one for our purposes. But I wanted to be able to show you how these different media queries would work, as you would have these things in there, and then you'd have to have a detection property to detect the size of the browser. And if it was, then have it implement button small or, button large, or XL, I should say. Okay. So the other thing that I did in here for this tool area is I have this section down here, this active layer. And so when you first come to the app, the active layer is set to none. Yeah. Active layer : none. And if you look down here, I put another line break after my set of buttons, and then I have another span, and that span has a span inside of it. So the span that's outside of it says active layer. The span inside has an ID of active tool, and then it has the word none inside of it. And so we can change that. We can, dynamically or programmatically change this to different things when we click these buttons up here. Of course, when you click these buttons up here, we're also going to do this toggle on and off that we were looking at. Let me turn that back on. Toggle on, toggle off. We're also going to do that, right? So when it comes on, not only does the layer come on, but you see the active layer is set to the precipitation layer. Yeah. So let me show you what the code looks like for this. So it's like I said before, it's kind of like what we did for the calcite, and also kind of like what we did for the Bootstrap one in the first place, but it's slightly different. So I'm going to start by just showing you what the one looks like for ecoregions, which is the one that we did with calcite before, where we use this value. Okay, so let me put the canary one in this also, and I'll do canary, and I'll say ecoregions, so it can be seen differently from these others. And this is for streams. Oops. And the one down here is okay, hold on here. Or the let's see, what is it? Precip Jan 2019. And I'll copy that and change it to July here. For this one, oops. July. There we go. Okay. Then finally for Modus. Let me get that in. Okay. So ecoregions. Here we are again. So we have this little idea of a document get element by ID. That get element by ID is, very explicit, and it is exactly what it says. So it's basically saying here, get the HTML element by the ID that I put in parentheses, and it takes it as a string. So it's looking for whatever the ID value is. So there better be an ID of ecoregions spelled exactly like this, because it is case sensitive. And so if I go up to my buttons in my little toolbar that I made, this should refer to an ID of ecoregions, and there it is. Okay, so this first step that we're looking at here is registering a click event listener, because we're chaining these things together. So first I get the ID, and then when I get the ID, I want to add to that ID the event listener of click. And this event listener method that's in here takes both an event type, like a double click or a click, or something else, and it takes the name of a function or an anonymous function. So in here, I've named the function to this function that's just after my event listener, and it's called toggle visibility ecoregions. Okay. So then I have a little canary to make sure that it's picking things up correctly. And if I go back to my app for a second, when I click on the ecoregion. So for me, the ecoregions is this tree symbol. And if I hover over it, you can see ecoregions also. Now look down here in the console, right? So down in this area, as I click ecoregions, you see my canary for ecoregions pop up. I click it again, and it shows up a second time with this little two. You see that it was a one before. I mean, it was there once, and if I keep clicking it, that number keeps. That's a counter basically for the number of times I've clicked that button. Okay, so that's my ID. My ID is ecoregions. So then I'm going to set a variable to the name of that ID, that this.id. And then I say if that variable equals the name ecoregions, then I want to do this. Now this is pretty cool. This is a nice way to do this. This is essentially, look at what we got here. We got the name ecoregions. And if I go back to my layer name, so in this case, to do this process, I went ahead and synced up my names of my layers to the the names of some of these layers to the actual names of the layer files, at least to start, I mean, to the types of layers they are. But they don't have to be that. I just did that for the first couple to kind of illustrate how you would do it. So here's my ecoregions, right? It's my layer name for my feature layer. And so down here in my actual function that's called when the click event happens, I say look for ecoregions, and when I do, I fall into the conditional, and then I grab my layer name, which in this case is ecoregions, and I look at the property that's called .visible. So there's a property on ecoregions on this layer, and it's visible, and the layer is this property is a value of type true or false. Okay. And so remember, when we have something to the left of the equals, that's something that we're going to set to some value that's to the right of the equals. And so in this case, we're setting the value of ecoregions visible to the opposite of whatever it currently is. So see that little exclamation? Remember, we call those bangs. So bang ecoregion.visible. So if ecoregion.visible was true with the bang, that means that this side here to the right evaluates to false. And so then it makes ecoregions visible equal to false. If, on the other hand, ecoregions visible was false, with the bang it becomes true, and so then ecoregions visible becomes true. Okay. And so then I have this little conditional set inside of this other conditional. So this is nested. So we got, here's our outer conditional. All right. Let me collapse that to see. So these are all nested inside of it. So then inside of that, I also do just a call to the value of ecoregions.visible again. And I say, if it's true, then set the value of active tool. Remember, that's that nested span that's underneath the buttons equal to, and I put TWIDIB, so I'm going to fix that. It's not TWIDIB, it's Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. There we go. I had a meeting with TWIDIB today, so I had TWIDIB on the mind. So if the value is true here, it will set that text content to ecoregions. And if it's not true, then it'll set it equal to none. So I'll show you, I'm going to put a 2 here just so you can see that change. So now that I'm in here, watch my console. When I click on my ecoregions, oops, wait, no, that's not where I want to do. What did I put the 2? Oh yeah, there it is. That is right. That is where I want to put it. See how it says 2 here? Right down here. And I also changed it to TPWD. So that's where I'm making that change. So it's just, again, document get element by ID, the name of the ID, and then dot text content equals, and then it's a string value that it takes. Okay. So once you do that, you'll be able to test it with this. You'll use your canary to get back your ID, make sure it's working. And then, of course, you can toggle back and forth to your heart's content. All right. So So that's how to do ecoregions. So I'll do one more. But I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to look exactly like the one we just did. Okay, so this is impaired streams. That's impaired streams is also the name of the ID up here. Impaired streams. Okay. So down here, we get the ID, we add the event listener, let's click, and then we refer to a function. Here's the function. We do our streams check on the ID. We set the layer to the ID. If the layer name is impaired streams, then we toggle the value the same way we toggled it up here with the bang. Notice that I have my name of my layer, the same name as my ID, just to make it simpler to show you how to do this. Then I do the same thing here. These are, of course, also nested inside the if statement. And I just change this to impaired streams or none, depending on whether or not the impaired streams value evaluates the visible or false. So that's here again. We'll refresh. And if I go over here to streams, this is the streams button. When I click it off, it stays to none. But when I turn it on, you see impaired streams. And then back off again, back to none. Okay, so that's how that works. So I'm going to show you one more. I'm going to show you the Modus one. Now, just to review again real quickly, the Modus one is the one that we use for the swipe tool. So that's the on and off, leaf on and off, or the the greening of West Texas kind of a deal. So let me turn off the ecoregions so that we only have our two Modus data sets on here: July, January, right? So if I want to toggle this off and on, or on and off, I need to turn off two layers. But because, like I said, the swipe tool is intimately tied to these two Modus layers. Because it's intimately tied to them, it's important to also disable or at least remove the swipe widget while the Modus layers are not visible. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that now. So for Modus, you get the same pattern here for the beginning part. Okay, all that's the same. And we call our function for Modus, we do a canary for Modus, and then things start to get a little different. So first, I still do my conditional check. That's my nested thing. But inside of here, because I have two layers that are Modus layers that I want to turn on or off, I have to do this toggle thing to both. Okay. And that toggle thing, I mean, is, the visible with the bang visible. So once I do that, then I can, again, do my conditional that's nested inside. So once again, here's my outer conditional. And then I have inside it my inner conditional and my inner else that's part of the conditional. So then again, if this NDVI Modus data evaluates to true, then what I want to do is change the text content to that, and then I want to do this thing, which is add UI swipe. So you'll know this part from the challenge that I gave you guys in adding the swipe originally. So of course, when you first come to this, this application, the idea is that the swipe is already going to be on, right? So when you're down here in this event listener, you need to, if you have a Modus layer, which would essentially mean that you'd have both Modus layers because these are both tied in lockstep with each other, then you're going to add the swipe object back to the UI. And if this isn't evaluate to true, then it falls into this else. And if it falls into the else, then you have to do this UI view.ui remove swipe. And that's what gets rid of that division bar that we saw when I toggled the layer. So once again, I'm here. When I toggle, here's the grip for the swipe tool. If I click the MODIS data, the bar disappears as well as the images. If I click it again, it re-adds it, and as it, as it adds the images back in also. Okay. So that's essentially what I wanted to show you today. So at the end of this video, you should have the tools you need to go in and add the information for these other layers. So for both the precipitation for January, the raster, this is the raster layer that we're going to look at here. So let me turn off this. I'll turn off the ecoregions and I'll turn off the water. So if I turn on the precipitation raster layer, this is the, if I zoom way down in on this, you can see that it's not the point data. It's the surface. It's the raster surface. Okay. And again, if I do the same thing with the July data, you can see that this is not the points. It's the raster surface. Okay. And so that's the layers that I'm adding for these, is the raster surfaces. Okay. All right. So what we'll do in class is we'll talk about how to add a legend. It's actually fairly simple to add a legend, but what we're going to do essentially is just take. I guess I can give you a quick preview. I'll just go to the REST endpoint for one of these data sets. So this is my raster endpoint for July. And you'll notice that one of the links here near the top is legend. And if I click that, I get this. And so this right here is it's generated dynamically. So, theoretically, I could go to this JSON. So this is what it looks like as JSON, that same legend. So I could do something where I work with this. And I've done that before. And in fact, I think in one of my earlier classes, I showed, not in this semester, but in one of my earlier spring semesters, I did show people how to do this with JSON. But I think it's a little much. So what we could do instead of doing that is we can just take a screenshot. So if I take a screenshot of this data like that, it becomes an image, right? So then I can take that image, I can push it up to my web server, whatever that URL is, I can make a reference to that URL and then show it inside of my map in some location with CSS. So, probably down here in this corner is a good place to put it because, when I have my raster layer on, it kind of swallows up the page. So, when I put it in here, I want to make sure that I put a nice visible border around it so it's easy to see that that's the legend. But that's what we'll do, is we'll just tie the visibility of the legend to the visibility of the layer using the same kind of constructs that we used in the other click events. Okay, we'll just have another layer that's sitting there, not visible until you click the layer on. Okay. That's all I got for now, guys. And I hope that helps everyone. And I will post this up to Blackboard. Thank you.